call this meeting to order. We have 5 trustees present. Please stand for the pledge to both flags. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
We'll start with the superintendent's report.
Am I passing this down? No, maybe? I think I have to.
Oh, I thought it was this one.
They've got it.
Is this his report?
Oh my gosh.
It's his.
That's his report.
Can't look.
Okay.
Madam President, members of the board, my name is Michael Cardona, Superintendent of Schools for San Marcos CISD. My superintendent report today is kind of a recap of what, a short recap of what I talked about in convocation. So I know last week that our letter grades came out, the individual schools grades came out. But there was a conversation with the entire district around what our opportunities for improvement, opportunities for growth are. The data is the data. We take the data and then we put action to both support teachers and to support our students as we strive to become an A district. And people will debate the accountability system. I have my own personal belief about it, but the reality, it is the system that we have. And, you know, when you see some of the data, we have room for improvement. But there are some things that aren't measured by the letter grade. It's a snapshot in time. It's a snapshot of, for elementary and middle schools, predominantly STAR testing. And really what I want to say as superintendent of schools, it's a snapshot for the high schools. It's from the graduating class of 2016-17. And that's a story that's not told either with TEA or with the newspapers. So if you remember where we were in 2016, in December 2016 more specifically, TEA asked us as part of the 85th legislature to send out a projected accountability to our communities. And so this was TEA's projected ratings. At the time, if you remember, they still were under 4 domains. And so you can see all the schools. Hays County Juvenile Justice Alternative Center was still listed, even though that no longer is there anymore. But you can see under the domains where TEA, you know, it is data that was older, but it is the data that they were going to use. And for the most part, the majority of data they use currently with some minor tweaks. I also want to kind of refresh everybody's memory. In May of 2016, which was my first year, a report came out on the Austin American-Statesman that listed all the high school rankings using the Children at Risk report, which is predominantly very similar in nature to what the STAR ratings are. They were different verbiage. They reference advanced level performance, certain other categories, but they still looked at AP, how kids did on getting a 3 or higher, SAT participation rates. There was a number of metrics they use that still are applicable to what we have to work with in our schools. So we sent a letter to parents on January 4th of 2017. One of the other things I wanted to talk about was the 60 by 30, which is part of the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. So really, in a nutshell, it's by 2030, at least 60% of Texans ages 25 to 34 will have a certificate or degree. So our current accountability system helps us align to the goal of the state in terms of getting our students to be career, college, and military ready. And again, we have several opportunities for growth. So these slides are taken directly from TEA. This is not my interpretation. This is the Texas Education Agency's interpretation. Domain 1, student achievement. The career, college, military ready indicators for high school, K-12, and districts. Just a brief sample. College ready, meet criteria on 3 on AP or 4 on IB examination. Thus, in convocation, when I made a comment about AP testing, it really is incumbent upon us as a system to get our kids ready, if that's the route they go, to be able to earn a 3 or higher, because we all know it, at a moderate $3,000 per class, it could help our parents out. You also see meeting TSI criteria, SAT, ACT, TSI-A, college prep course in reading and math. You see complete a course for dual credit, 9 hours or more in any subject, earn an associate's degree. To date, we have had not one student earn an associate's degree, in large part because it's hard for them to get the number of courses, the need to earn that. So that's something that we are working on and trying to figure out partnerships with our current partner, Austin Community College, but it is a difficult road to it's a difficult road for our students. You see complete an on-ramps course, and you see meet standards on a composite of indicators indicating college readiness. What's interesting is that these indicators are for implementation in 2019 and beyond. Then on the career side, you have industry-based certification, CTE coherent sequence coursework, completion and credit aligned with approved industry-based certifications. And then you see in red 1/2 point credit. The only comment I'll make about that is that, as a reminder, this was the class of 2017. So these kids walked the stage and have been gone for a year. And after they graduated, TEA came in and then said, we're not going to give you full points on coherent course sequence, we're going to give you 1/2 point. So we did project that if we would have gotten a 1 point for, that is an area where we did a lot of work, and we were 20 percentage points above the state average, roughly, Mike, about 20% points. The high school in that domain would have been a B, and it would have affected their domain 3, which would have made them a B. So now we're talking about going from an F to potentially a B, which is a different narrative. It didn't happen, but not because the school didn't do anything. It didn't happen because TEA changed their minds. And they also, at last minute, changed what statute was in terms of accountability, and that did affect several schools across the state that went from meeting standard to no longer passing standard because somebody made a comment in a meeting, and so they changed state statute. So we're talking about a story of, we have a lot of room for improvement, like many opportunities, and I'll show those, but some of it is out of our control. But we do believe the high school has done a lot to put systems in place to address many of these things. So this is TEA's, what's on their website. It's not what Mr. Cardona, the superintendent, says. Gives an indication, a kind of just a brief description of what each indicator is. And again, the only thing I want to point out is there's nothing that says anything's from the class of 2017. To me, if I'm a parent and I read this, I think this is current data. Like, this is based on current data, which I think is an issue that we have to advocate for with our communities, to say, again, it's a snapshot in time. We have done many things that I'll talk about in a little bit. On the right side is our score, and you can see our closing the gaps in school progress. We have a lot of room to grow, like we really do. I mean, we grade level performance, a score of 5, which is 50% of your grade. We just kind of didn't do well in that area. Student achievement, a score of 13, 30% of our grade. We have room for improvement. Our English language proficiency, we should be applauded for. They got 100 points. They've done well. Relative performance of 76. You know, we want that to be, you know, in the mid 80s to 90s. So, I mean, we do have opportunities for growth, but I also want to say we are heading in the right direction. And then on the bottom is the financial integrity rating system, which we scored an A, 100 out of 100, which is the second year in a row to do. And it's a hard thing. I mean, we get audited for those things. This is the data that really keeps me up at night and that we talked about. So I'll explain it for the community and for the public who may be watching. So this is reading 3rd to 4th grade. So number of matched students means we had 419 kids who were with us for 2 years. So school years 2016-17 and 17-18. Of that, 110 of those students going across to the right, 110 of those students out of that 419 failed the STAR test. This past year, 84 of that 110 failed the STAR test. So 76% failure rate. You can read the rest of it, but this is the message in convocation. We cannot have a system where more than, in this case, 61% of our kids at a minimum, if you fail, are failing the following year. That is on us as a district to fix. And then we'll talk about some of the things. Ms. Ruiz-Mills will talk about some of the things we are putting in place to fix this. You'll see in math, again, I'll just stick with the top, 3rd to 4th. So these are gonna be our current 5th graders. You have 419 matched students, 98 of those students in 2016-17 failed, 74 of those kids this past year failed, 76% of those. So we know, the principals know, they, by name of student, the 74 kids entering 5th grade who we have to intervene with. They've been provided that data. And the same goes for the 4th to 5th, who are incoming 6th graders, 6th to 7th, who are now going to be 7th graders, 8th graders, 9th graders, and the kids going in to high school. So we know who those kids are. Now it's on us to fix and put a system in place to support those kids and support those teachers. Again, I mentioned the criteria for our college-ready kids. I talked about this at convocation. So out of the total graduates for 533, and as a reminder, out of this 533, probably about 125 of them graduated from Phoenix. So I say that to say, while we did really good things to put kids in possession to be successful, we weren't giving them opportunities to earn points, to earn industry certification, AP. We had some kids that went down to the Goodnight Center to work on dual credit for a variety of subjects, including automotive. But we had 239 out of that 533 graduating class, or 45% of them, who earned total credit. So again, that is an opportunity for improvement, which I believe we've done things since then to help. Where we do need to work, and we've done some work with professional development, is if you look down at the second line, the second red arrow is meeting criterion score on AP. We had 63 kids out of that 533, about 12%, and then 2 rows down earned an industry-based certification from an approved list, 57 kids, about 11%. That is an area for improvement. We've had those conversations, both the principal and Mr. Barton, with both the CTE and also with training. For AP, we're working with a group called the National Math Science Institute, who has really good track record with professional development and training teachers on the rigors of AP. So we have put systems in place to address that. Certification, we're working. We have a good partnership with the chamber. Mr. Doyle has been reaching out as far as getting mentorships and getting feedback on our curriculum to get kids ready for industry-based certification. As a reminder, the new high school facility, that automotive strand has a great number of certification pathways that will help our student. Ironically enough, that's opening up, we believe, because businesses are putting pressure on TEA to open up the course deck, because they're like, hey, what about us? Like, you're just kind of pigeonholing, I think it's 79, I think, but they're trying to, 74, but they're trying to open up the number of courses that'll align. And we think that'll happen because the business community is putting some pressure on TEA.
We took time out of the plan.
Are you taking questions now?
Let me
or
just finish and then I'm almost done. So the next one is growth, domain 2. Again, this is opportunity. So if you see the arrows, you'll see 15% of the test drop 2 or more performance points. And you can see the number of tests. I believe my screen is like 67, 554, and 298. And then you can say did not meet, approaches, and meets grade level. You see 16% of the tests drop from approaches to did not meet, or did not meet for 2 years. And 14% of the tests maintain performance level less than a year of scale growth. So that's 45% of our students. And that is another opportunity for us as a system to improve. We cannot have kids go backwards in the system. They have to maintain or they have to keep progressing. We have 41% of the test which had a year or more scale point, which is really good, 547, 886 under the meet or exceeded for meets grade level, which I think is impressive. And 14% got masters this year for 1 point, 820 tests. So again, we have opportunities for improvement, but we are moving in the right direction. Ms. Ruiz-Mills will speak about specific things we are doing to address with curriculum and assessment and some other areas. And then these are the other measures that really aren't shown for what we've done and what we believe will affect our academic outcomes. So putting dual language, we think being a bilingual student, being biliterate in 2 languages is going to be a plus and will help students. You see social emotional support, which you as a board have been gracious in supporting, because we recognize that there are some significant trauma that our students come in with. Avid and Gear Up. We revamped the GT Showcase, the Science Fair. We have a great partnership with San Marcos Education Foundation, pushing innovative teaching grants. The CTE partnerships I mentioned a little bit ago with internships and externships. We have great community partnerships with United Way of Hayes, Caldwell County, where they're working with our pre-K students, School Fuel, Boy Scouts, Lions Club, and go on and on. The PSAT that we implemented the first year, starting with our 8th graders, helped us identify, and some 7th graders, helped us identify some kids at Goodnight who qualified for Duke Tip Talent Search, who had we not done it, we would not have identified. So, you know, there are things that we're putting in. The social work program with Texas State, which I think is rare for school districts to work with. We've really had a good partnership with the women engineers out of Texas State. Chamber of Commerce, again, has been a great partner and is wanting to find mentors and expand that program with our Gear Up students. Rotary and Kiwanis, everybody seems to be hands-on. And CTMC, we met with them this summer about some potential partnerships for some school-based clinics. So I think those are things that aren't measured, but that we believe are valuable for our students. And that is my superintendent report.
Mr. Redondo, you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Cantu. Mr. Superintendent, and I don't anticipate that your staff or you have this information tonight, but in regards to the number of certifications conferred at San Marcos High School, I can't find the slide right now in the presentation, but I think it's at 57. I'd like to see what CTE courses those are being conferred in, what CTE courses, I guess, students are receiving certification, and then also the number of students enrolled in those CTE classes, and then how much time it takes to get that certification, because I know some take a significant number of
1,000
hours and all that good stuff. So if I could see that information at a later board meeting, I'd really appreciate it.
We can send that to you.
Anyone else have a question? Mr. McCall? Thank you. We're number 5, public forum. We have one speaker. Want to remind citizens are offered an opportunity to address the board without prior approval. Presentations shall be informative only. Delegations of more than 5 persons shall appoint 1 person to present their views before the board. The board requests that presentations not include statements that may be considered defamatory. Presenters should conduct themselves with common courtesy and in a respectful manner. The presentation includes a complaint against an employee of the district. Proper channels set out in district policy to seek resolution before bringing the matter to the board should be exhausted. The board shall not tolerate disruption of the meeting by members of the audience. If after at least 1 warning from the presiding officer, any person who continues to disrupt the meeting by his or her words or actions, the presiding officer shall request assistance from law enforcement officials to have the persons removed from the meeting. Our first speaker, and first and only speaker, Jennifer Hutchinson, regarding the Central Texas Writing Projects.
Hello, welcome back to school. I know a lot of you guys worked all summer, so welcome back, teachers. My name is Jennifer Hutchinson. I'm an 8th grade language arts teacher. This year I'll be at Miller Middle School, and I represent the Voice of Teachers as the president of the San Marcos Classroom Teachers Association and conduct professional development as a teacher consultant for the Central Texas Writing Project. Tonight, really, I'm just here to boast about all of the teachers who worked hard this summer pursuing professional development, either offered by you, the district, or on their own, things that they just sought out and did on their own. I feel really proud. I've heard a lot of stories of teachers who did things that were really cool this summer. And I think that we all have a lot to be proud of. But really specifically, I want to brag a little bit about the Central Texas Writing Project's Fall Conference that was held here on Saturday. It was really awesome. Dr. Carmen Tafoya was our keynote speaker. She's a well-known children's author. She wrote What Do You Do with a Paleta? What Do You Do with a Rebozo? Her story was fascinating, and we really learned a lot. We were really inspired. I'd love to have her back sometime. She talked about protecting our students' right to write and the importance of every voice being heard, and the way she did it was fascinating, like a dramatic interpretation of some of the characters that she's created. It was really cool. Some folks that I want to publicly acknowledge and thank are, first of all, Dr. Turnbow for the use of the facility, the beautiful Performing Arts Center and classrooms that we used. Thank you. Nicole Riccio and Heather Isagiri presented on blending digital and traditional writing tools. So it was a really awesome presentation. Adriana Lopez Casiano and Taylor Hardy did a beautiful lesson on a story called Enrique's Journey. If you haven't read the book, it's fascinating. I highly recommend you look it up. And they combined their interpretation and the story to do a lesson on human migration. It was fascinating. And Carmen Tafoya sat in on it and watched it. It was really cool. Some of the volunteers are my fellow teacher consultants, Susan Perez, Georgie Courtney, Cassie Palashek, and even a community member, Ann Fragoni, came out and manned one of the tables for us. It did sign in, so I thank you, Ann. Jeff Leroy from the high school technology came out, and obviously can't do anything without those folks. So that was very nice. Thank you, Jeff. We had guest teachers from Eanes ISD, Comal, and even a university professor who led a session on memoir writing. They did writer's workshop in the elementary classroom, blogging in the classroom, just a little bit of everything. So also thank you, Dr. Stevens from the Writing Project, for entrusting me and my colleague Crystal Kelly to co-direct the conference this year again. We had a few more people this year than we did last year, so hopefully it'll grow a little bit more each year. And we're already planning for next year. So if you have suggestions of things that your teachers want to learn about, or if you have presentation ideas or keynote speakers, we would absolutely love to hear it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hutchinson. We're ready for academic update, accountability update. Is this different than what was in there?
This is, yep,
We had one in our.
Good evening, Madam President, Board of Trustees, Mr. Superintendent. I'm Monica Ruiz-Mills. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Teaching, Learning, and Assessments. With me today we have Ms. Laura Hernsberger and Mr. James Barton. We're going to be doing our 2018 accountability report update. This is required by the Texas Education Agency. A lot of what you see will just be a review of the data. If you recall, back in June, we presented the SSI data. That was the Student Success Initiative data for 5th and 8th grade. And we had also presented, because we had received that exact same day, some of the end of course exam data. We fast forwarded to August, where we had principals review their data and their action plans. Each campus presented. During that time frame, we also had Dee Carney from Moat Casey and Associates go through the A through F system. So really, it's just a continual progression of the data and how it's evolved to where we are currently. So just to review, our end of course exams again occur in the spring with 3rd through 8th grade taking the STAR exams, and then you have the students who are enrolled in Algebra 1, English 1, English 2, Biology, and U.S. History. I don't know what I did. Who's moving it? Okay, don't. Thank you. Okay, so we have the 3 passing standards. We have approaches, the passing score. We have meets, which is really the strong knowledge of the course content, where the student's prepared to progress to the next grade level. And then we have masters, which is mastery of the course knowledge and the skills. This is our 2017 versus 2018 data. As you look at it, this is what we showed you previously, but it only had approaches. We went ahead and we added the meets and the masters. If you look at it across diagonally, you can follow the cohort where grade 3 was at 72% at approaches, and then when they went into 4th grade in 2018 to 70%. That goes all the way through. Later on, we'll show you the cohort in a 5-year longitudinal progression. Really, the goal, though, for all of us is to increase the number of students in meets. If you recall, and I'm going to bring this up a little bit, but if you recall the curriculum audit as we're going through these slides in 2014, the curriculum audit back then stated that there was inadequacy in long-range planning to support student achievement. The curriculum was inadequate in K through 12, and the assessments were not aligned and reflected a limited improvement. So as we go through this and then start showing you the historical data, you'll be able to see the peaks and the valleys where opportunities for growth have emerged. This is our algebra data. And then now we have our reading year-to-year data. With the algebra data, we went back and we align that to where next year, or this upcoming year, I'm saying next year, it starts already, this upcoming year, all 8th graders will be taking algebra. We had parents attend that meeting. We had an algebra bridge camp that Gear Up did, preparing students for that. And we've also, you know, we're increasing the opportunities for our students to take that class. We have our reading up on the board right now. And again, same thing if you look at the trajectory by grade level, going from 3rd grade in 2017, 69%, to the cohort now in 4th grade at 2018 remained the same. In grade 4, we showed an improvement from 62% in 2017 to where they went into 5th grade at 71%. Again, reflecting the meets and the masters, and those are the areas that we want to really focus on. Then we have our writing. Really, the focus needs to be on writing and literacy. This has been a struggle, even though there has been improvement. We don't have longitudinal data because it occurs in 4th grade and 7th grade, and then in the high school. What we're doing on our end, the focus on literacy, besides the Fontes and Pinnell right now that's being implemented in K through 1, and then we'll spiral up into 2nd. We're going to be utilizing the AVID strategies because we are an AVID district now, and so we'll be using the Wicker strategies with an emphasis on the focused note-taking. Student learning objectives will now be part of the teacher evaluation system. That's required by the TEA, and the area of focus there will be literacy and writing across all content areas, and that will also be a measure of evaluation. It'll be the 17th dimension on the evaluation process for teachers. And so we did training last week, and this week that training is also occurring at the elementary levels. Here's our science. Science occurs in grades 5th, 8th, and biology. We were proud of the science scores in elementary. We had our 2 secondary science instructional coaches really filtered all the way down into the elementary and helped our science teachers and our elementary teachers develop really rigorous lessons and hands-on activities. So we're pleased to see the direction that's going. Same thing with social studies. And then here's the math history test. So if you start with grade 3 in 2012, it's color-coded, and it goes all the way through diagonally. So you see them in grade 3 all the way to where they are in Algebra 1 through 2018. So that gives you the history. What this doesn't show is, I think there was a time, I think it was 3 years ago, I'm trying to recall it off the top of my head, 3 or 4 years ago, where they didn't count the test scores. Remember that, because they had changed the TEKS. So that doesn't show that here, but it's giving you the percentage of passing. As we go through this, we have to remember that since 2012, there have been significant changes to the test since the STAR EOCs went into place. There have been significant changes, and tests have been combined and whatnot. Same thing with the reading history. Really, when you look at this data, the opportunities for growth are, in order to improve the schools, we have to improve the support structures in place to support not only our students, but to support our teachers. So we are increasing rigor in all of our content areas through the professional development and opportunities that Mr. Cardona spoke about earlier. He spoke about NMSI, which is the National Math and Science Institute, which does focus on college readiness and works on strengthening teaching and training support. We also had the AP Summer Institute, where we've been sending more teachers for AP training. We have the Avid Institute. We brought Springboard in, which focuses on a rigorous curriculum for the pre-AP classes, but it's just good content strategies that can be utilized in middle school and beyond. We've added the implementation of dual language and the support programs there for not only the students and the families, but also for the teachers. Again, we spoke about Fontes and Pinnell, which will really focus on literacy and phonetics and balanced literacy. And then also the master reading teacher initiative that we've started sending teachers to. And then for math support, bringing in Vontour Learning on those half days to work with our math teachers at the elementary. So the big focus on literacy and numeracy. This is by demographic. We want, if you look at it, you see the green, that's approaches, just like the last time. We really want the meets, because that's where we're evaluated on in domain 3. So we want that purple to go up. And so that's where we're gonna start focusing. As we go through these slides, we need to know that last Thursday, the 3 of us and Ms. Dre, we met with all of the principals. Ms. Hernsberger created a list by campus of every student that either did not meet progress, like they didn't gain any points, or they digressed, they went from meets to approaches, or they remained the same and only earned half a point. With that list, the principals are coming up with their plan of action. How are we going to tier instruction? How are we going to scaffold that instruction? What is it going to look like? And our goal, our target goal, is to improve by 10% in every content area. They have the list of names of students. We know exactly where we need to meet them at. But as we talk about meeting the needs of the students, we also need to meet the needs of our teachers and meet the needs of our administrators. And the way we do that is through the professional learning, through the SIBME instructional coaching program. SIBME is where if Ms. Hernsberger is the instructional coach, she videos me, she and I speak later, and we talk through that lesson, how can we improve it, but it's not evaluative. It's between the coach and the teacher. So all of these processes. Did you do that? Okay. So here are Algebra 1 EOC results. If you look at it, you can see how the middle schools are doing really well there at the approaches grade level, and then also at the meets grade level. The high school has also significantly improved in algebra. Next. Right here, English 1 EOC. Right here, your eye automatically goes to, these are all our student groups, but with our special education student group in particular, you know, speaking to Ms. Marano, she and her team have really gone in a new direction in revamping what that ARD process looks like, bringing the students in, getting student voice in order to collaborate, really see how the students learn best. They've gone to making that co-teach model more rigorous and seamless, where both teachers are actually owning the content, where you've got a co-teacher taking an active role, either doing the parallel teaching, where there are 2 groups at a time with instruction going on with the co-teacher and the general education teacher. We also have the small group teaching, where we're pulling groups out to work with them, or you have the stations where students are rotating between the general teacher, the co-teacher, and then there's a station for independent study. So really working on that for our current LEP students, really purposefully scheduling them into the classrooms, because we want, you know, we want our special education population and our current LEP students to be with our teachers that have that strong content knowledge pedagogy.
Ms.
And
Reese-Mills,
yes.
are these EOC scores, when it says, this is the class of 2017-18, right? Mr. Cardona said some of the data is 16-17, I think I heard, and some of it's 17-18, but these comparison sets are this year's senior class versus last year's seniors class?
Not
Or
seniors, last
high
year's.
school, right?
Yes, so for English 1, you had
Freshmen
the freshmen of 2017.
Of this year.
And yeah,
versus
and
the
then-
ones from
right.
2018.
right. Okay? So it's the scores from 2017 and the scores from 2018.
So they went broadly up across most
Yes.
of the OC scores, especially at the meet standard.
Yes.
That's commendable for the high school, and might reflect well on the schedule change or how that was received by the students.
Yes, absolutely. The other thing, looking at English 2 end of course results, and again, you know, all of our student groups, we look at the special education. What can we do to meet the needs of our special education students? And again, having conversations with Ms. Mariano, 68% of our special education population has a learning disability in reading. It's either in basic reading, reading comprehension, or written expression. We have 300 students that have a learning disability in reading comprehension, 209 students in basic reading, and 138 in written expression. It's not just at the high school, that's overall. You know, what is an opportunity to be praised, or an opportunity for growth, but also what needs to be praised is that the students are taking the STAR exam. They're not taking, there's no longer the modified version. They're taking it online with their designated supports, and they're in a classroom with the teacher that has that, with the general ed teacher that has that content knowledge. So we're really making it a more inclusive environment. You know, we look at it and we think, well, we're not closing the achievement gap. Well, we're closing the opportunity gap. And as we close the opportunity gap, the achievement gap is going to begin to rise as well. We're closing the opportunity gap by giving them a more rigorous curriculum, as mentioned earlier. We've increased opportunities for PSAT and SAT test taking. We've increased the dual language, you know, we've implemented the dual language. We have the Springboard curriculum that we've also brought in, and it sounds like a lot of programs, but what those programs do is they offer the support and the training. We always talk about the best practice. We need to focus on the next practice. We're taking what's best and moving it to the next level to support the students and the teachers. And with that, the achievement gap will begin to close. Again, this is just our, it's just bar graphs by demographic student group. Go ahead.
But the third grade reading and math both went significantly down across the board in all student groups. Do we have an explanation for what happened in this year's third grade class?
Yeah, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Nicole, you can jump in here, please, anybody. But no, I really think, too, it's that foundational literacy. We're going to start with reading, right? We implemented the TEACS resource framework. There was some hesitancy there, and so now that people have started utilizing it a little more efficiently and effectively, because we had those conversations, we started to see the growth. One thing I do want to say is with these scores here, this was the first year we were a pilot school district to do the interim assessments. The interim assessments were set out by TEA. They correlate to the STAR exam. It was only for elementary. This year it'll also be at the secondary level. You know, we had De Zavala who utilized the interim assessments. Ms. Villanueva did an excellent job taking that data and making sure that students were in the appropriate, receiving the appropriate tiered supports in order to scaffold their learning and that instruction so they could progress. Also, going into third grade, it's a test of endurance. We all talk about how we took that Google certification test. That's a test of endurance, you know, and so the third graders are going in for the first time. What are we going to do to prepare them? We're not going to become a test prep environment, but we're going to make sure that in second grade that we have CFAs that function as benchmarks so we can start assessing students there and filling the gaps. You know, with the changes that we've made in leadership, I really believe that the foundation will start at pre-K and will start filtering up into the programs. Go. And then these are just the remainder of the results by the demographic. We really, I want to praise the teachers and the administrators for really showing progress, but there's still opportunities for us to grow. Mr. Barton has developed a beautiful coaching model where we'll all be on campuses. Every other week we'll be hitting different campuses. We'll be working with principals. I've already asked a couple, can I have an office so I can just lay my stuff down and go in, but that's what we're going to be doing, giving those instructional supports, really doing a cognitive coaching method. This history of STAR, this is kind of nifty. Ms. Hernsberger put this together. Oh, go ahead and just click for me. And so this gives you the trajectory of growth, and then you want to move it down to the bottom, and then if you go look here at the bottom, and we can print all of these out for you so I can get to the bottom portion of it. Right over here, it's exactly what we showed you. We can also show you not only by district, we can show you this is the state level. You want to go through this?
Yes.
She's going to man the mouse. So you have here the state level and how students did from 2012 through 2018, and then you can click to how we did as a school district. And so one of the other things that I wanted to say as well, with an emphasis on special education, TEA came up with a special education strategic plan. It's a comprehensive plan. One of the things they are addressing as well is that something is not right with the ELA test for the special education students. So they're developing some professional development opportunities. They're looking at it across the state because it's everywhere right now, and so it might end up being another redesign. And that's all part of that strategic plan, which Ms. Marano will address later. Okay, you want to go on to your part?
Yes. Hello. Get over there to it. Okay. So the accountability system, the fun part. And Mr. Cardona already spoke with you about this, so I'm just going to hit the high points. I feel like I will have job security because it changes all the time. It started in 2012, the STAR test did. And with the original setup, the class of 2015 was going to be the first ones to all have to pass these 15 end of course exams. But that was never fully realized. By 2015, it was down to 5 EOC tests, which are the ones that we report on now. And grades 3 through 8 have pretty much stayed the same. We started with a phase-in. That's what we used to have to look at for our targets. They simplified it last year, made it approaches instead of all these level 2, level 1. And then used to we had 4 separate tests. Now we only have 2. We've got STAR and STAR alternate. So all of our kids are included together. This was one of the last slides from last year's presentation. So we got a new accountability system in 2017, around this time last year. And this was pretty much all we knew about it. We would have a new accountability system. It would have 3 domains instead of 4. We knew their names. And that it was going to come out for 2018. And that we would get the specifics as time moved on. So we have them now. So House Bill 22, that's what came out last summer. Commissioners shall evaluate school district and campus performance and assign each district and campus an overall rating of A, B, C, D, or F. This was the old system. 4 indices, similar names. Now we've got student achievement, school progress, and closing the gaps. We get a letter grade for each of those plus overall. So here's how it works. to calculate the accountability ratings. First, we talk about domain 1, that's the student achievement domain, which shows how much students know and are able to do at the end of the school year. It's mainly based on STAR, 100% at elementary and middle school. The high school, it's 40% STAR, 40% CCMR, and 20% graduation. The STAR component is interesting. As you recall, there are 3 passing standards: approaches, meets, masters. We take the percent of our students who were at approaches, the percent at meets, and the percent at masters, and average those 3% together, and whatever number that comes out to, that's your raw score. What we knew a year ago was that if it was a 60, that would be an A. And now we have those cut points. We've got CCMR, we've already covered that, so I won't read them to you again. All right, so once we do that, there's our domain 1 score. I didn't think you'd really want to see the math part of it, so. All right, so school progress. Shows how students perform over time and how that growth compares to similar schools. There's 2 parts to it: academic growth and relative performance. Academic growth is really what we had those meetings with the principals over. How much are we growing our kids in math and reading? We want to see them go up. You've seen this slide. So that's domain 2, part A, academic growth. Now we calculate domain 2, part B, relative performance, which essentially takes your domain 1 score and compares it with other campuses with similar EcoDIS percentages. So we could fill that in. And once we have those 2, we go through and we highlight which was the higher of domain 2 part A, domain 2 part B, and that becomes the domain 2 score. All right, closing the gaps domain. This is the one that's aligned with federal standards, and it's pretty much the same as the first 2 domains, except now instead of looking at it for all students, we're looking at it for individual student groups and making sure that we're meeting the student group's needs. The students in the student group's needs. That's hard to say. These are the student groups. And their meeting of their own targets contribute to the overall domain grade. And here are their targets. So here's our domain 3. Now calculating the overall score, step 1 is determine the better of student achievement, so domain 1 and domain 2. We already did that. Step 2, weight the better outcome for the student achievement and school progress, and that's worth 70%. Step 3, weight closing the gaps at 30%, and that's where you get your overall score. Technically, it just says met standard or improvement required. Of course, ours will say met standard. There are letter grades too. We had 2 campuses with distinction designations this year, Crockett and Miller. No one was on the public education grant list. And really what we're focusing on is equity. This is what Mr. Cardona brought up at convocation, and it's a big push.
The way we meet those needs is by identifying the students, and those were the conversations that we had on Thursday, and the supporting them with the resources needed and the support of us going in and also helping and coaching them as well. So the next one, these are just the literacy and the numeracy slides that Mr. Cardona showed earlier. And then this is the data that Ms. Hernsberger will go over with you.
All right, so there were questions at the last meeting about how different groups did. So this is Every one of those rings represents a student. It's unmasked, so if you hover, you don't see who the kid is. And I can sort it out by Avid was one of them. So Y means yes, they're an Avid, N means no. Avid is only at 2 campuses, so I will get rid of the other ones so you can see it better. And we're using tools like this so that it's easier to find our students who need that support and target it and see how we're doing. These are our 2 would be our coherent sequence kids. 1 means they took a CATE course, and then 0 means they're not coded CATE at all. And we have this for reading, writing, science. We can divide it out by number of absences that students have. Kind of see some of those red circles disappear. Number of referrals. Are there any questions about this before I?
Any questions?
And then we've got, this is something new for this year. We made this at the end of last year using attendance data, but every day this is going to update for the current school year. The blue line represents enrollment, and the orange line represents students who are in attendance that day. So we can get a really quick look real quick and see what's going on. I met with some principals and discussed this, and it's neat because I can pull the data and they add the context, and we can really find some places where maybe we didn't realize that we had an issue that we can address in advance now. And similar to that, we have another dashboard that looks like, sorry, I'm not trying to make you motion sick. This is our weighted attendance by campus. It looks like it's a huge difference, but really the yellow starts at 90% and the green starts at 95%, so it's not as big as it looks. But this will be another way that we can just track every single day how our campus is doing with attendance. Keep going the wrong way. Okay, Mr. Barton.
Mr. Barton will speak to us now about the CCMR.
It's a complicated system, however you address it. And for those of you who've been reading the newspaper or trying to study it online, it's difficult to know where to begin. With last week, the opportunity to be here with principals and district level administrators to talk about how we want to respond to this, how we want to address it, we came to the conclusion that domain 3 is the best place to put our emphasis. If we improve there, which focuses on moving all students to meets, we improve in all other domains, and we're directly aligned to our core commitments and our values. So if I can talk for a second about how you move domain 3. That's moving past just talking to kids about passing, but moving them to the higher standard and expecting all students to have that capability and all adults to teach students for that opportunity. It is definitely a language change. So we don't want to be an intervention-heavy district anymore. We want to take those students who Mr. Cardona mentioned did not meet in consecutive years, and we want targeted intervention for those students. But there are a lot of students who didn't make progress that passed. And those are students who can move to the meets and the master standards. We don't reach them through intervention. We reach them through extension and engagement and enrichment in our daily curriculum, Tier 1 instruction. So you're going to hear some themes, hopefully, tonight and moving forward that focus on those things. Number one, this summer we already have teachers with more rigorous resources at their disposal. That's been an investment of our district this summer. At the elementary school level, it's Fontes and Pinnell, making literacy a priority in a really systematic way. That wasn't there, that was a gap, and it's highlighted in our 3rd grade scores. It absolutely is. We have answered that with the resources that we've given to teachers so that they can do a better job with students. At the middle school level, we've invested for the last year in College Board resources, things that are lined up and aligned to the AP exam. We did that for our gifted and talented students. We've moved that down to our pre-AP students, and by training our teachers in those resources, they take those same strategies, even if they're not using that textbook, those same strategies down into their general classroom. We also want to make sure we have great training for teachers. And that's something that Mr. Cardona again highlighted in our AP scores. We were at a deficit in our AP. We can do a better job there. Some of our teachers hadn't been trained in 5 years. It was an injustice to them to expect them to achieve 3s, 4s, and 5s. We had to do a better job, and Dr. Turnbow has sent those teachers over the last 2 years. We're expecting better outcomes there. So in order to get enrichment and extension and engagement, we want better resources for teachers and better training in teachers' classrooms. But we also need to do some things as a district. So on page 84 in your board book, we talked about how we're going to answer the college career military readiness issue, which is also in Domain 3. That is an area where our students can be successful. Our system is aligned to House Bill 5. We built a CTE program for House Bill 5, and it's outstanding. We have coherent sequence for all of our kids. But we can do a better job in the House Bill 22 context, and that's getting them certifications. So in career readiness through certifications, and in college readiness, we believe the TSI test is the best direction to go for 2 reasons. Number one, our students are also already demonstrating the ability to be successful there where we've given them the opportunity. That's the one with the highest percentage of kids being successful. But number two, we can give that test at an interval that we choose. It's not like the SAT where it only comes around at a certain Saturday that a kid's available, or the one SAT school day time we do it each year. We can prepare students with classes and bridge camps for that test. So we think that's the right place to be. But also, the TSI test advantages kids in addition to the district. So if a student demonstrates college readiness but it's not in TSI, that's great for us on CCMR. But when they go their freshman year to college, they might be asked to take a remedial class because they hadn't tested in TSI with us. We can make a better investment there, and we expect better outcomes on college and career military readiness for our kids as well as in college. Finally, as TLA and central office, we can do a better job of monitoring and feedback to campuses. And that's an investment that we've committed to making. We'll be on campuses weekly or bi-weekly, looking specifically at certain grade levels or certain standards and giving feedbacks to principals and instructional coaches, which goes to teachers. And we think those are the things, those are the areas as a response to the system. While we do have room for improvement, those are the areas that we will grow. And that's our shared united front moving forward.
Sure. Another question after John. Mr. Cardona, so when I look at the overall scores by campus, I see that 2 campuses had an overall score greater than 74. 74 is too low of a number by my estimation. What is a reasonable expectation of how long you expect it'll take for each of these campuses to be above an 80?
Realistically,
Yes.
probably 2 years.
Okay, thanks.
Selfishly, I hope it's 1 year.
Sure.
Mr. Redondo.
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. For my colleagues on the board, I'm going to reference page 84 of our board book. It's the San Marcos CISD CCMR plan. Mr. Superintendent, my question on this plan, is this a kind of a loose framework, or is this kind of like a guiding, governing document to college, career, military ready in our district?
This is our central administration's kind of
Okay.
semi-plane.
I guess as my colleagues reference this document, I guess I would appreciate, or as an individual trustee would like to see more along the lines of not only what is connected to accountability, and I guess what would get us points on the accountability system, but things that actually support the transition from secondary to post-secondary. So having a college visit, you know, filling out the FAFSA application, submitting Applied Texas, you know, things of that nature. I know that isn't measured in current accountability standards, but I think having the counselors and having the college and career staff and things like that, encouraging the students to submit those documents by those priority deadlines obviously would increase those actual numbers of college attainment and enrollment. And so I'd like to see that included in this plan as well. That's all I got.
I do have a question. I'm going to follow up on Mr. McLaughlin's question. You mentioned 2 years, I think, something that implementing new concepts and new processes takes time. Along those lines, and I know that Mr. Barton was talking about some of the things that we're going to be doing, but in addition to that, is there anything that the board can do to help in that process? I mean, is there anything else? I know that efforts are being made. I'm very appreciative of the teachers and all the training that's going into that. Is there anything else that we can help with, whether it's through resources, seeking resources and you bringing it to the board and saying, you know, this will be, or is it just something that we know that probably it will take 2 years for us to see flourishing of the efforts that are taking place right now?
Well, so a convocation I did mention, one of the questions I asked was, are we addressing equity right now? And so what my answer was, central administration of the board, I believe, have adjusted quicker than our staff has adjusted. Like, I mean, the principals are sitting right here. 80 is the score. I mean, I heard 80. So we know who the kids are that aren't doing well, and we know the kids who have regressed. The issue is, you know, how quickly are we going to push people to, and not push in a bad way, but we have to move with a little bit more sense of urgency. And it's not some schools, it's all schools that need to move, because one affects the other as you go through. And I think we have provided the support to the teachers. I mean, we have done individualized PD, was a big push to get teachers to use those for trade days. We have sent teams to do different things to look at innovative approaches. We've sent our principals to different campuses across the state of Texas to see high-performing school districts, and they've seen the systems that are in place. They're the systems that we lack in some cases, but part of that is a political will to want to push people, and then really part of it is them deciding to be a little bit more selfish and say, hey, I want to be an A district, I want to be on that list for TEA and be the model district that people visit. I think it can be done, because it's, I mean, going up to an 80 is a certain number of students, meets to masters and approaches to meets. I mean, it's a quantifiable number. They can sit and figure that out. You know, they all have master's degrees for the most part. They can sit and figure out, what is it going to take for me at Crockett to be at 80 or above? They should be at 90 or above.
Well,
right? Hernandez should be at 85. I mean, we know, they know the data. They know how to put the formulas together. The issue is, they're going to sit with the teachers and show them which kids, and then ask the teachers, what support do you need? Because we've supported them. So when I first came, there was a 2014 curriculum audit. So we had a curriculum framework, TEACS, resources that we put in place. Y'all will remember some of the conversations that some people said was, we were implementing Common Core, right? There was a culture, well, you're telling them, well, no, we're putting a framework in around what to do. So then we went to, how do we address the upper end, the AP kids? And we looked at the GT class, and that created all kinds of chaos in the community, right? It really created chaos because it was change. Like, I don't know how else to say it. Our biggest enemy of getting to 80 is the fear of change and wanting to change quick enough. That's really the bottom line. Is, are people willing to get out of their own way to do what's best for kids?
well, you know, and I agree with that, because we can only do so much as providing the resources and making sure that our teachers or all our staff are equipped, well-equipped, but it's ultimately that individual teacher that will make all the difference in the world as to, you know, they can, and I know we have hardworking teachers, but it's like you said, you know, are we going to be a C school district, a B school district, or an A school district? And what effort am I gonna put towards that to make sure? Personal effort into it, besides the resources that are there.
Yeah, I mean, as a superintendent, I look at Los Fresnos ISD, which is 90+% students economically disadvantaged. I look at Laredo United, 76%. I look at Edinburgh School District, you know, 85%. Eagle Pass ISD. I look at all these districts that are much larger. The larger you are, the harder you are to move. You know, it's easier to move 500 kids in one grade level, 10%, than it is to move 5,000 kids, 10%. So I look at all these districts that are all A districts, and I think to myself, it's a similar population. In some cases, like Laredo United, 36% ELL, and they're an A school district. So I mean, it can be done. Do we have the system? We've put the systems in place, but you know, the principals will tell you. One of my things was we recognized the first year give laptops to teachers, because if we're going to ask teachers to change, we need to give them laptops and have them experiment and move. And we're a Google district, and we empowered teachers, and then the reality is we powered off. We had 20% usage of Google, which is a free resource to get kids to collaborate. You know, when I look at data, I look at library usage. The high school here, 2 books per kid. Like, that's not, if you want kids to read, when you have a library that's issuing 2 books, that's not gonna get movement. And that's a cultural shift. You know, when you look at all our schools across the board at library, just kids reading, other than Crockett, who's an AR school, we have opportunities for improvement. We've provided libraries. We provided libraries to the dual language teachers in Spanish and English. Guess which population of kid is outperforming in some cases? Our general population, our bilingual students. So that when they get it, they'll use it. And I don't know if that's what we have, the Fontes of Pinel, I think, is gonna work, but unfortunately, that's K1. We're tested 3 through 8. We did ask, Ms. Drake can verify that we called Fontes and Pinel because I wanted kindergarten, 3rd, 6th, so that in 3 years, the entire system would be covered. They don't make Fontes and Pinel for 6th through 8th grade. So I was like, well, what's gonna happen when they get to middle school? Like, we're gonna do all this work in elementary. Hopefully by then, they'll have something. But remember, the starting point was, and it wasn't me speaking, the audit in 2014 said teachers were basically flying by the seat of their pants and winging it. The fact that they were doing as well as they were shows that when you give them tools, they'll adapt. They'll adapt. But now the issue is, are teachers gonna hold each other accountable in a culture that says, this is the way we're moving? We're about all kids. Instead of, these kids can't. And honestly, during some PD, there was, when we rolled out Springboard, that, well, I don't know if our kids can do that in this district. Well, we haven't even tried. Like, you're already stopping before we even start. And we I say we, because we're a team of 8, we had the same fear, like with dual language. We all remember when it first came out, it was like, well, hold on, well, we hadn't started yet. And now a year later, I would say those same parents are like, please don't stop it. Like, please, like, it's working. And we believe that's still 2 years away from those kids being, those kids are going into 2nd grade. And so we believe we'll see some growth. I think the high school is going to see some growth this year with some systems.
Well, we've been talking about closing the gaps for a long, long, long time. And at one point in time, I was told that the gap was closed, which it wasn't. But, you know, it is a domain now. And I mean, one of the primary things here, and so I think that's important.
Well, one of the things, like, okay, so when you say closing the gaps, part of what we have to step back as, like with our ELL population, if they pass the STAR test, or whatever, if they pass, they're exited. So they're taking their monitor kid, right? So now they're in the other population of kid. So the only kid in the ELL population are the kids that are having issues getting out. So it is always a gap, because once they're successful, they're removed.
Part of the
And they become part of the general, and typically, in some cases, those kids move to the upper end. So some of it is, we have to understand, like, it's just the way the system's built. But we really shouldn't have kids regress. If they've been with us for 2 years, they should not regress. That is a system issue. And it's not any specific school issue, it's a system issue. Because it's not me, it's 3 through high school. You can't have more than 60% of your kids. If you fail 1 year, you're gonna fail the next year. That is a system issue we have to fix. And that really is a sense of urgency on the principals. They know who their kids are. You said 80%, that's a reasonable expectation, because some of the schools are pretty close to it.
Thank you.
We're done with the achievement. Thank you very much. We're optimistic we will move forward and upward with our scores.
We're waiting to see. It will be.
Standards-based grading, first grade.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, and Mr. Cardona. My name is Nicole Dre Rivera, and I'm going to ask you to turn to page 85 in your board book, and you have an example of the draft of the first grade competency-based report card. If you remember, last year we rolled out competency-based grading in our kindergarten cohort, and we've received lots of really positive feedback. Parents have shared with their teachers, and teachers have shared with me that they feel like they have more information about what their children know and can do now than they have in the past. With that success, we're rolling it up with the same cohort of kids. So the kindergarten parents moving their children up to first grade will continue on with this competency-based system, and we'll continue to roll that up every year thereafter, at least through 5th grade. We have a Spanish version of this, and one thing we're actually looking at right now is combining English and Spanish. Potentially, it makes the document very long to have both languages on one document, and so that's a logistical issue that will work out, but regardless, we have the report card in both English and Spanish. Our dual language students have a slightly different version in that there are some variances in the way the language instruction, like for instance, the phonics instruction occurs, of course, and so that will be reflected as well on the dual language report card. Are there any questions?
It is very lengthy. It's going to take a teacher a long time to fill this out.
One thing that is not shown on this sample is that not all of these skills are assessed every 9 weeks. And so as they move through from our office, we will shadow out or gray out the areas that are not yet assessed. So it looks a little more daunting than it really is.
Anyone else?
So-
Ms. Costilla?
So the form, is it in Spanish too?
Yes, ma'am.
So you're just showing us the English?
Yes.
Attention, John.
Mr. Arredondo?
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. Yes, Ms. Dre, and then for my colleagues, it's, I think, page 87, or the bottom of page 86. For government, citizenship, and economics, I see a list of things that I guess parents or students are gauging as far as understanding government, citizenship, and economics. Is it possible to include the importance of voting in there? I'm sure it's in the coursework or things like that, but it says the student understands the role and authority of public figures and citizens and so on and so forth. So I'm assuming that role of a citizen is the significance and importance of voting, but I didn't see it listed, so I just wanted to share that.
I can certainly check it against the
Never
TEKS and see
too
if it's
early
explicitly
with how many
named,
voting
and if it is, we can certainly put it in there. I know it's explicit in other TEKS, I'm not sure about first grade.
So they get it in another grade?
It's emphasized in every grade, but it's not necessarily an assessed skill.
Great.
Right.
Any other questions, y'all? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Like college, man, we talk about college in kindergarten, we talk about.
Student Code of Conduct update.
I placed a copy of the Student Code of Conduct on the dais earlier today, and Ms. Georgian had also emailed the PDF file. There are no changes to the Student Code of Conduct
Most of it, right.
because the legislative session is not in session, and so it's the exact same Student Code of Conduct from this past year, but it is there for your review. You can go through it, and then at the September agenda prep, we can just take action to vote on it, but it is there. What has changed is the student parent handbook, and we, again, going back to the strategic plan for special education services that TEA put forward, they did want us to add a new section across the state to the handbook, so Ms. Tammy Morano is going to relay that information.
Good evening, Board. Basically, the strategic action plan was developed. It was sparked by the 8.5% target, the child find issues that OSEP conducted statewide. And in response to that audit, TEA developed a special education strategic plan, including the corrective action response to address non-compliance in 3 areas that they found statewide with TEA. Part of the corrective action plan included assuring that schools comply with the legal framework, including a student handbook statement and collecting referral data. And then also TEA, the third action, is that TEA is going to provide LEAs a resource to describe the difference between RTI, dyslexia, 504, and special education, because those worlds, those areas constantly and continuously blend together. TEA is supposed to have that resource document to us, to the LEAs, by September 1st, and then we in turn are to provide that to parents by November 1st. The remainder of the plan, and I'm going to get back to that real quick, but the remainder of the plan, other than the corrective action plan, includes what Ms. Ruiz-Mills talked about earlier, that they developed 10 technical assistance networks. And that's why they had they hired a lot of people over the summer. Part of it, 2 of the networks include inclusive practices for improved outcomes for students with disabilities, and another network is called Intervention Best Practices. So that's just 2 of the 10 that they developed. They're also still working on revising the dyslexia handbook, which is supposed to be completed sometime soon. They still haven't given us a definite date, but they're working on it. I think it was supposed to also be by September 1st. But bottom line, what all of this is in response to is that 8.5% target rate that TEA once said that was our target. Our school district, as I've said before, we are around 12% of our population has students with disabilities. So I do not believe that we have a child find issue in San Marcos. I think that we've done a really incredible job working with RTI. I've also, just to kind of summarize this, I've worked with Ms. Laidley, and we have talked to the RTI teams, the support teams, and we will be going around and working with each of the campuses to review their data on students that they have that have been in RTI for a while or are progressing through the tiers, to make sure that there aren't any students, or are there students, that we want to fast track and push forward with referrals. That's what basically all of this says, is TEA says in your handbook, you need to make sure that you address Anytime a parent wants a referral for special education, they have the right to request it. It doesn't mean that we're necessarily going to do it, but we're going to look at data. We're going to sit down with the RTI teams. We're going to look at previous state assessment data. We're going to look at grades, all of that information to help determine what our next steps are for referring for special education services. So that's the only change there.
Ms. Henson.
When you say the 12%, does that refer only to special education, or does that include dyslexia, 504, or?
That's a great question. It is only special education. So approximately 12%, we're at 960 students as of today of our students are identified with a disability that requires specially designed instruction through special education.
Can we get information about the percent in 504?
And served by dyslexia also?
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Update on SHAC applications.
Good evening, Board of Trustees. Andrew Fernandez and Jennifer Vogel. So we received 6 applications, or we gave you the applications, the list of applicants. We held it open for about 3 weeks in July, and according to Ms. Vogel, if we have all the 6 that completed the application before the deadline, it's 4 parents, 2 non-parents. That would keep us over the 51% of parent ratio that the SHAC is required to have. Anything else you want to add? So this is just a list of applicants for you to review and look over, and then we can make the decision in the September meeting, and then have our first SHAC meeting in September as well.
Questions? Ms. Hanson?
How, I know we talked about parents, but I don't remember, maybe you can refresh my mind if we did. How are community members after this year going to be able to apply?
We will look at the pool of the candidates from last year who had the 2-year term, and we hope that through their own recourse that we would lose some of those that will not want to renew, and hopefully from that we will see a decline in the numbers, and then those that are staying, hopefully we will have some fresh numbers and some fresh people too to consider.
So they will be able to apply just
Yes,
like?
they
okay.
can reapply.
But I mean, new people can apply and then?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Construction update.
Board, my name is Coleman Uresti. I'm with San Marcos. I'm in San Marcos with Perkins and Will. I want to kind of give you a quick update this evening. This time on schedule, I do not get to say right on schedule. We have a couple little things we want to talk about that. We actually have moved up some of the schedule for the elementary school renovation projects, and I'll jump into that during that part of the presentation. But we've bid the construction portion for the high school, and originally we had talked about starting in July or August for construction, and right now we're negotiating, or the district's negotiating that contract. So what we're going to do is next month we'll be able to give you an updated schedule from the contractor to show how they're going to work out some of that phasing. The good thing about the high school project and the schedule is it's phased in a couple of different sections, so they can make up some time. They can, in certain places. So if they can start the bus loop now, they can start on the new addition, and then we don't start the renovations until the summer. So some of those things that we're just going to have to work out with them and figure out what that end date is. I still feel hopeful that we can still have everything done, but I just want you to be aware, there is a month and a half of time that they've kind of lost, but I think they'll be able to pick it back up. And we've already started the discussions with them. So don't want any surprises for you guys. I just want to be able to talk about that with you. But everything else, right along with schedule. We actually did move up the elementary renovation projects, and I'll show you that in more detail in just a moment.
Well, before you leave schedule, because I stress out about this every day when I drive by, The Hernandez roof, when's it gonna be done?
Hernandez roof, I think. Yep, sorry.
It's gonna be done in mid-November? So all that stuff in the parking lot, is that gonna be there when school starts? Do we have alternate parking arrangements for faculty or parents? Okay.
Yes, sir, we're keeping up with that with the campus, and they are gonna store some stuff in the parking lot. It's only taking up about 8 parking places.
It looks like more than 8 to
Well,
me.
they may
but
have, by the time school starts, it
Oh,
will be
okay.
8.
And why did they wait till like August 15th to start? I mean, they had like June, July, and nothing.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look
It
and see
was-
when we bid it, but.
It was late June.
It was late
We got
June, I believe,
approval.
when we finally got the bid approved, and they have been working. I know, probably even to Ms. Owens and some other people, it didn't appear like, but our first plan was to get the canopies torn off so they could be put back on by the time school started. And that's still on schedule to do. They're working 7 days a week, 10 hours a day. Now, we have talked to them. They will be working in different areas when school does start. There's some of the work that does cause quite a bit of noise, and we've talked to them not to be doing that over the classroom areas during that time. So we're working with them, but it's a pretty big process. So.
And did we do some sort of background check on the workers, since now they'll be working while the kids are on
Yes, sir.
campus?
They are all background checked.
All right, maybe follow up as an additional information request. I'd like to see, is our construction manager at risk? Is this a project that they're managing?
Yes, it is.
I'd like to see that correspondence with regard to, the contractor, so that I could maybe get a picture for what took so long. Because for me, just viewing it, and I didn't hear anything from Ms. Owens, but I run by there like almost every day, and so there was nothing going on like all of July. They weren't like secretly working in the back or anything like that. They just weren't
and
there.
I brought that up last month. Last month, we were talking, they have to get shop drawings together, they have to order the material, they have to manufacture each panel for this site. Every roof is a different size. So they were doing a whole bunch of stuff while all that's happening. You can't just show up and start putting stuff on. We have to order all the materials. That's a ton of insulation, and we'll get into that in just a moment. So they have to manufacture that much insulation for this project. So there is a lot of stuff happening from the end of June, during July, all that time they were doing all the paperwork, getting the orders in, manufacturing the products. And then what they ended up doing is they had their permit at the end of July, but they didn't have materials, so they had to wait for their materials to be able to start the actual construction portion. Right, and that's why on some of these renovation projects, we're bidding in February so that they can start doing all that ordering, they get all that taken care of. And if you remember, we actually moved up Hernandez re-roof project. We moved it up quite a bit just to get some work done, over this summer. So it wasn't originally scheduled to start this early. And I have that little tidbit right there that's on the schedule. Hernandez re-roof schedule accelerated. So, I'm keeping track of this. I'm updating. I'm notifying you every time something changes on the schedule. And we definitely have talked about that. And I'll make sure that I'll add more notes and stuff for that in the future.
Okay.
Transportation Center is still currently under construction. You can start seeing how this project's starting to look like this little rendering right here. You can see the exterior CMU is going up around the building. You can see from the inside we have the beams that will support the roof deck and the roof. They have 95% of all the parking lot already poured and in place, and I believe the district is working with the gasoline tank manufacturer, and they're going to deliver tomorrow, right, Jay? Tomorrow, the delivery of that? So gasoline tank will be delivered tomorrow. At Hernandez, demo of that front canopy has been going. They have to custom make all the gutters to the right size and the right length. They have the insulation, and then the structural girts that go in between, and then we have all of our underlayment that goes on, and then we'll put the metal panel straight on top of that. And here you can kind of see that entire wing starting to get that. The good thing about this process was we don't have to tear off metal panels. We can actually go over the top of it. We lay our insulation in between the existing panels, and then we go over the top after we put the underlayment on. So that is an advantage. This can be done during the school year. If we were going in with another system, we wouldn't be able to do this. With Miller Middle School, spent a lot of time last week talking about that. We actually just met with middle school on Friday and went through each classroom and teaching space, each department with each department head, and really talked about the details. Started to get involved in instrument storage layouts. In the library, talked about shelving, the number of volumes that we need to meet TEA. Talked about how we laid the library spaces out. So we're really getting into those kinds of details, and next month we come back and we're going to show you the resultant of those meetings. Still developing the exterior as we go, and really working on, we need to sit down with the city to discuss some exterior issues, make sure we're coordinated with them, make sure that we're meeting the new requirements by the city. Last month, I did tell you that we had sent in the drawings to Cadence McShane. We received those estimates back from Cadence McShane, sat down with the district administration, and right now, from a base bid standpoint, we're right on track. As I told you last time, we had started to take a look at see if we can afford to do some additional athletics things, because we are growing the capacity there, and they will have that need. So what we're doing is we're looking at ways to make sure that we get closer to being able to afford some of those items as well. But from a base bid standpoint, what we said in the bond, we're looking really good from an estimate standpoint at this time. Rodriguez Elementary School, going really, really well right now with the construction side. You can kind of see, I don't know if anybody's driven by lately, but really that big wall, that's our half basement wall that's cutting that hill basically in half, is already being erected and poured. You can see all the grade beams out here going into the ground, all the conduits, all the plumbing, everything's really going along very smoothly. Bartlett Cox doing a great job of construction out there, keeping the entire team informed very well. They give weekly updates with pictures and making sure that the team is informed. So it's been a really good process so far. A couple additional pictures here. You can see this grade beam turning the corner. So what ends up happening is they'll lay the slab right on top of that guy. Once they finish putting all the plumbing and everything in there, all the electrical that runs underneath, they'll come in and start putting that slab down, and then they'll start putting steel up immediately. So they work by section of building. So they're just keep moving. That concrete guy will move to the next zone, next zone, next zone as steel follows in. The high school kind of gave this update already. We had the approval last month for the GMP, for the price. Weber Commercial was selected, and you're currently in contract negotiations between the district and the contractor. The first step needs to happen is get the contractor out here, start talking about safety, start talking about where the fencing is going to be put up, you know, where teachers going to park when they have to tear that lot up to put the new bus drive in, you know, some of those things. And so they've already started getting a plan together, started initially talking with Jay about fencing locations and those types of things. So they'll be in probably maybe at the end of this week to be able to do some temporary fencing prior to any construction starting. And then I'm going to give the update on the elementary school renovations. We've had some great meetings, met with ILS last week, met with principals a couple weeks before that, really starting to get into more of the detail with them. We actually go out to bid on October 9th on this project, and to accelerate some of those pre-order things, we're going to actually go out with a civil package and a structural package a little bit early, and then we'll release the MEP and architectural at a later date, so that we can start getting some of that steel ordered, some of the rebar ordered, and some of those things to help speed up that process. And that's the update, overall update. I'd like to jump over if there's any questions there. Jump over to the elementary addition portion. So again, like I was talking about, we've actually we accelerated the schedule a little bit, going out to bid October 9th. We have that early bid release package going out in September, about September 20th, I believe. Yep, September 20th, to be able to help accelerate this a little bit. I think that'll help once they start getting on individual sites for those additions. They'll be able to start the dirt work. They'll be able to start some of that stuff. Hopefully, you know, in mid-January, they'd be able to be starting to pour, or February, being able to pour concrete for those new additions. Quite a few meetings have been going on during the summer, and I know that I stole a lot of time from our principals over the break, and now ILS has come back and we're like, we need your time, come on. I know that you're trying to set up for school, but we just give us a little bit of time. So really had a lot of informations with them. I talked about the visioning sessions previously with you guys, so I'm going to kind of skip over that portion a little bit. Meeting 2 was when we sat down with each individual principal at each of their campuses, and we literally went through each one of the spaces, what happens in this classroom, where, you know, if there's any availability to create flex spaces, where are the good places to be in this campus. Talked about capacity, because some of these spaces, you know, we're looking at taking over a classroom and making a flex space, or creating intervention rooms, or some of these spaces. So they're going, I have 6 sections right now. You're only allowing me 5. Well, that was part of the bond plan. We were looking at bringing on the elementary school, the new elementary, Rodriguez, when it comes on board, we have to redistrict, and then we've aligned all our capacities to meet the current curriculum need, along with, to match basically the new elementary, and making sure that all the district, or all the campuses across the district have the same support spaces. So we talked about a lot of that during meeting 2. Meeting 3 was really us going out there verifying, do they still make this flooring tile to match? It's kind of getting into that kind of detail. And then we actually had our consultants come out. We verified, you know, double check that the drawings that were built are really laid out that way from a structural standpoint, from an MEP standpoint, so that we don't have a lot of surprises during construction. Just going off the drawings looks great, but actually get out in the field and, oh, they changed this, the duct actually runs this way and not this way. So we're just trying to catch some of that stuff early. Great reason to have CM at Risk on board here, because they're out at those meetings as well. They're up in the ceilings. They know some of those surprises as well. So with renovation, it's good to have them on board the entire way through. And then our most recent meetings have been the schematic design proposals. So before we came, we wanted to make sure each principal was okay with the layouts and the types of spaces. And then we also met with ILS last week and really dove into the big changes. You know, it's a change that it's been talked about, but actually being able to see it, they're understanding, oh wow, I don't have doors on my library anymore. We want to bring kids into our space. We want them to get excited about reading. We want them to come in and enjoy this space, you know, like at Rodriguez Elementary School. So we started talking about some of the support spaces, the community rooms that we have. If you want to have after night evening sessions for community come in, some of those types of support spaces that are being put into these new libraries. And that's what I talked about. And then just a review for your reference. It's the scope of work, what we're talking about for each type of each campus. So the capacity, the additions of classrooms, and I'll jump into these in a little more detail on the drawing pages here. So for every single campus, we have the existing, and then on the next one we have the addition, and we're calling out clearly. We have the 4 classroom addition for Bowie Elementary School here. We're doing renovations to the media center. We're creating an art space. We're creating some flex spaces. And here, they already have a lot built in. They have one down here. They have one in here. creating that in our addition as well, and then creating this intervention and specialized spaces here, really trying to help become more efficient with our capacity and our layouts. Some of those classes take over an entire full-size classroom when they have 4 kids in there. If we can subdivide some of these spaces, we're getting more efficient with our spaces. We're not losing an entire classroom to the 4 kids. We're actually be able to subdivide a space, and now we have 2 classrooms for those smaller classes, and now we can have our classrooms back for those larger ones. At Crockett, again, doing a 4 classroom addition, or a 3 classroom addition off the back there, creating flex space for both the first floor and the second floor classroom wings, renovating the library space, and doing a renovation for art at that campus. At Hernandez, creating some flex spaces, a maker space out here, not actually in the library space. The library is pretty small at that campus, so we actually have the availability to create a maker space out here across from a maker or flex space, creating our community conference room here, and then a flex space for our younger children as well, with a full renovation of the library space. At Mendez, coming in, creating this community space here, creating a flex space for this classroom area, creating flex space for our younger children out this direction, and then doing a full renovation of the library space and creating this library media or maker space that's accessible for everybody. You don't have to go through that media or that library space. 5th grade can access it as well from their exterior entrance, so they're not having to leave to go exterior. They can actually enter it from their hallway as well. And then at Travis, doing a 4 classroom addition at the end. That's going to require us to move down that playground, the existing playground, and purchase a new one down at this end, which was a part of the bond plan all along. Coming in, doing your addition or your renovations and your additions to your library space, and then having art classroom, and then creating some flex spaces both on the 1st and 2nd floor as well. And some of the big highlights for all the media space or libraries really are the addition of the community room, the makerspace addition, or a makerspace, creating that makerspace for STEAM focused projects, creating an open environment where kids can just go in and out throughout the day, creating that more welcome feeling to get that excitement about going into the library, updating the furniture and circulation desk. And a lot of the update for the circulation desk is really about visibility, so that librarian can see when she's at her desk, which she has to be for checkout and those types of things, she can still see what's going on in the library. You know, with the shelving, the way shelving is, it creates a lot of blind spots. So we're talking about that with each individual ILS to talk about how we solve some of those items. And then creating the types of spaces we need in each of the libraries. We're talking about small group, we're talking about presentation space, we're talking about teaching spaces. So, and I think in the next version, we just had our meeting on Thursday, we're going to be able to talk about that a little bit more in more detail, a couple more renderings. That is everything for the elementary schools. Do you have any questions or concerns?
Anyone?
Ms. Cantu.
Mr. Arredondo?
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. Coleman, this isn't for you, so rest easy. Mr. Superintendent, in regards to opening the new elementary school next academic school year and with the additions and renovations, in September, I would like to at least see a preliminary timeline of what redistricting is going to look like and the relationships between the board and the community and the district and transportation, all of that. I know we've had, you know, casual conversations about that, and I don't know what that timeline looks like, but I'd like to see what that timeline would look like whenever that timeline is going to begin.
We have started meeting on that. We have met with the principals to see how that first draft is going to look. We are waiting for our snapshot numbers in October, and what we're gonna do is take a look at that, so we'd have a presentation to bring to the board, and then also start having some public meetings.
Okay, perfect. Again, whatever conversations have taken place, obviously seeing what that process has been up until today, and then what that process looks like going forward. And just so as we as a board start having that conversation, the community can be aware of, again, the timeline of what that's gonna look like.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to take a little break here.
Could've got all the way down to here, I feel.
I know, I should have finished the updates, but I can't anymore. I can't try.
together. Y'all see Miguel?
Not my week to watch him.
I know he had the munchies. He needed.
That's what my
He'll
kids
catch
always
up.
say.
Yeah, he'll catch up.
Yep.
Let's start.
Reconvening at 7:57. 7:57. We're ready for the technology update.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Cardona. I'm Greg Hubenek, Executive Director of Technology.
James Nevides, Director of Educational Technology.
So starting last year, the board and SMCISD administration made a significant commitment to technology in the way of teacher devices, student devices, and even support systems that will support those devices. That is an incredible and unmistakable sign of the culture at San Marcos CISD is changing. Expectations are high. So I think that directly supports your core commitments, and we are more progressive this year than ever before at SMCISD. We also believe that if we can maximize the use of that investment, then it will directly impact academic rigor. The opportunity gap that Mr. Mills spoke of earlier would be diminished because all students have more equal access to technology and instructional resources. Well, that'll go directly in line with student achievement with all student groups, which then impacts and can narrow the achievement gaps. So we wanted to spend a couple minutes tonight telling you of some of our efforts in order to maximize that investment and actually make the digital learning effort at SMCISD successful. Real quickly though, technology support at a glance. And my apologies, this might be the ugliest slide I've ever made. But it's important to note that this technology support at SMCISD covers a lot of different things. Looking at the bottom, we have, counting students and staff, over 9,300 customers that we support. And those folks use well over 10,000 devices when you count all the different administrators, student devices, and the recent device rollout. The infrastructure to support that consists of pretty significant backbone, 130 servers, 165 network devices, and on top of that is 800 wireless access points that allow all these mobile devices to connect to resources over that infrastructure. We also support many software systems. I didn't even try to quantify that. It grows every day. 720 telephones and at least 350 problems. Oh, I mean printers. We're also responsible for the security system, which is over 715 video surveillance cameras and 145 badge access control doors. We support that infrastructure with 4 technicians, 2 system or network administrators, 1 help desk associate who actually doubles as our website administrator, and an administrative assistant on the technical side. But within the technology department, with the support that you guys have provided, we have some new disciplines now. There's data and information analysis. You've heard from Laura Hernsberger earlier tonight and the work that she continues to do to help draw a clear picture of what's going out there with accountability. Information assurance and security to make sure that the data we share with all these software applications remains secure. Application integration, and this was a key missing piece for quite a while. This capability with all of the software systems and all of the data that we have to use to get those systems to work properly with each other and so that it doesn't create a burden for teachers and staff members. There's a lot of behind the scenes work, and this addition's been super powerful. A lot of improvements have been made, but it's one guy, and a lot of improvements are still to be made. But this was definitely a big benefit to our operation. PEIMS and Student Data Services is not a new discipline, but they're now within the technology umbrella. And education technology is also not new to SMCISD, but it is new to our department And for the first time in a very, very long time, this team has actually been staffed and supported to be able to be successful, to do the things that are so critical for a successful technology and digital learning program. So we wanted to talk about the strategy we use rolling out this digital learning initiative. We started with teacher devices, which may sound a little bit counterintuitive, but like I mentioned before, that did set the culture and expectations for the district immediately. It enabled and empowered the teachers to start looking at how they can rebuild their delivery of curriculum. They could learn when they were not at school, but most importantly, they could bring that to professional development, and it became a professional development tool, which is so, and without the teachers on board and having an opportunity to prepare for this, you know, it would be very difficult to be successful. So that's where we started, and we ended up with Tier 2. Again, I mentioned the creation of the Edtech team and all the professional development that they can roll out. We're not even talking about professional development that our TLA team and campuses are already offering. This is professional development directly on how to integrate that technology to deliver instruction. A lot of infrastructure preparation. We've always worked very hard to make sure that the infrastructure was robust. This last summer was no exception. We've replaced probably almost 50 network devices, added well over 100 wireless access points. So almost every classroom in the district has its own dedicated wireless access point, and definitely all the secondary campuses that will be one-to-one have their own dedicated wireless access point. And then, of course, there's other ones throughout the district. I mentioned the data and analytics. This is not only the work that Laura Hernsberger's been doing, this is also embracing partners like Bright Bytes, which gives us an early warning indicator dashboard, as well as other dashboards that show us how we're using technology within the district, and helping to build a clear sight picture on what's going on out there. Between the work that Laura's doing and products like this, we can actually be more data-driven and start making data-informed instructions. I'm not going to steal James' thunder, but he'll be talking about learning management systems and single sign-on solutions that are super critical to maximize the use of technology in the classroom. And putting it all together is what we're at now, is bringing the student devices into the classroom. It allows us to bring it all together. We're also looking at classroom reconfiguration to make sure that classrooms have the audio-visual systems that they need in order to create that digital learning environment. So this is our target. We're looking at all teachers having laptops in classroom AV systems. Pre-K, kinder, and first, well, actually all of elementary will have classroom sets of 10 devices, whether it be iPads or Chromebooks, and the associated charging stations. And all secondary with one-to-one devices, whether that's Chromebooks or laptops. So at first blush, this may look like a lot of stuff, right? But this is absolutely required to support the digital curriculum that our TLA department is attempting to put into place. It's directly supporting those efforts. Mr. Cardona mentioned earlier that we are pushing very heavily and doing training to be a Google district. And although I agree that our adoption rate could have been higher, it's very difficult to build a digital classroom environment and get participation when your students don't have adequate technology in their hands. So we fully expect to see that increase. We've seen the pictures. I didn't get a chance to get one of the really old technology on campuses, the old computers with the 3.5-inch floppy drives. Okay, first of all, no one really uses, or at least the younger generation, doesn't use desktop computers anymore, much less ones from that generation. So that stuff has to go. This is just, it's the way things are today. So definitely thank you for the opportunity to put this into place. Yes, ma'am. Kathy, I thought you had a question.
This plan is at the end of this year or end of next year?
Perfect question. So we've already done the teacher laptops. We did that in the fall of 2017. That was 600 laptops. We followed it up in the spring with student devices with kinder, 3rd, and 5th grade, and then 7th grade one-to-one devices. Those 7th graders will take their devices with them to 8th grade. So this year we're in the process of rolling out one-to-one devices for 6th grade, 9th grade, and 11th grade, and some resources for Phoenix as they move over here as well. Next year we're looking at almost 2,500 devices because it's 1st grade, 4th grade, 6th, 9th, and 11th. And then the following year is the year that will hit everyone. I wanted to mention, though, on fall 2019, you know, it shows equipped, K1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. It doesn't mean that the other grades don't have technology, because there's technology out there now. Some of it's new, some of it's older. It is still being used as we do this rollout. In fall of 2020, we finish up with all the grades. It's also the year we do the teacher refresh, and at that point, we've hit everyone. And I put a little space, because in fall of 2021 is the first year that we actually start a full, refresh of student devices, because it'll be that far out. And 6th and 9th grade get done every year, so because they stay with the kids through their progression, either through middle or high school. So just a very quick shout out to some folks that have thus far made this possible. People like our admin assistant in our department, Christy Moore, who made sense of this stack of stuff. And that's just such a small sliver of the stuff that's come through our office, just to demonstrate organizing that, getting it out of boxes, getting it inventoried, getting it into an assembly line, and all hands on deck, to get it prepared. James and his crew were trying to get these done all themselves, so everyone in the department jumped in to try to get them prepared. Another shout out to our purchasing department for allowing Bernhardt to help us deliver this stuff, campuses for helping helping us deliver it and get it into place. So a lot of folks people using their personal vehicles to carry it across town, in addition to the van that Bernhardt was driving. So big thanks to a lot of folks. Just a few details about the plan. We do have the campus support to ensure that parents and students sign a one-to-one technology device use agreement so that they understand the expectations. And additionally, because families are financially responsible for these devices, we're offering an optional insurance plan which protects against damage and theft. And it definitely makes things much easier for folks to replace or repair those devices. Other things that we're putting into place this year, which is the first year for these, because of the one-to-one, are things like remote filtering, so that we can actually monitor and filter internet access, whether the students are at school or at home, or away from school, I should say. The product also allows for classroom management. If you look on the left, you can't really see the details, but that's a classroom management dashboard that allows the teacher, if you're a teacher and you have a room full of kids, every student has a device, it could be unwieldy. We're trying to help the teacher with classroom management, right? They can turn the internet access on or off on those devices. They can see what all the kids are actually browsing, what they're on now. They can push, I need you on this website, and push that out to all those devices. So trying to bring them some tools, if they need it, to manage that classroom environment. Also, one thing that we're excited about is the parent reports. So I know that a lot of parents are going to have questions. What are my kids doing with these devices? Well, you may not be able to read it all, but on the right is an example of a parent email report that goes back to parents, how your student used the internet this week. 30% before school, 50% during school, 3% late night. Here's the top searches your student or your child made, blocked websites. So it gives you some real feedback, maybe to build your confidence, to kind of pull parents in to this process and make them part of the conversation. So those are kind of some of the things you think about whenever you think about a student device rollout. But really, the critical success factors are the things that aren't just directly in line with those devices or that technology and the infrastructure or what we put on them. It's what we're doing in order to ensure that it's embraced and it's adopted with fidelity. So I'm going to hand this to James. He's going to tell you about several exciting programs they've got going on in Edtech. I think they're going to make all the difference.
Let me adjust this mic. The 5 items on this graphic have a major impact on educational technology. Mr. Hubenak discussed teacher devices and student devices. And I was here in the spring semester and we talked about technology integration matrix. This is the framework that we adopted for describing and targeting the use of technology to enhance learning. I think this graphic speaks volumes because it shows what we're doing is student-centered, and if it's student-centered, then it's purposeful. A study was conducted by Speak Up Research that was done that shows that new demands on teachers require new approaches. Are teachers being effective with integration of digital tools? And as Ms. Ruiz-Mills said, are we meeting our teachers' needs? According to this study, teacher comfort levels with new instructional practices aren't very high. 78% of teachers are not very comfortable facilitating student collaborations utilizing digital tools, and 70% of teachers are not very comfortable personalizing learning for each student. So what are they looking for? What do they want? How can we help them be more effective? How can we serve them? To more effectively implement new teaching and learning innovations in the classroom, teachers are looking for collaborative planning time with peers, 65%, traditional PD training, in-school coaching, info on classroom management strategies, and virtual coaching. This information aligns with what we're hearing from our instructional coaches, and it's really a mixture of all of these to help us identify our path for professional development here at SMCISD. So we created a set of expectations that we call tech-spectations, great tech-spectations. The best way to describe it is a layer added to a scope and sequence at any content area for any grade level. We're providing tools to model how to teach with instructional tech, not necessarily what to teach, right? So we're focused on the intent, not on a specific device or on a specific software. How are we going to make this happen? What's our posture for bringing this stuff to fruition? First and foremost, educational technology coaches. They spearhead all of the integrating of technology in the classroom. Grade and content level planning, as well as individualized training and virtual coaching. We have on our intranet a catalog of resources that we call Edtech University. Teachers can subscribe to Edtech University, and as we add new content, they receive email updates showing what content has been added. It's just a way for us to help expand our reach and allow teachers 24/7 access to some PD. However, for our team to be very effective in our training efforts, we have to continuously extend that reach and really leveraging our instructional coaches at campuses as they know what's going on in the classrooms, right? They they interact with teachers the most, lead PLCs. We want to be able to heavily train the instructional coaches so they can help plant seeds with teachers on how to utilize technology in the classroom. Third part of our tripod, if you will, is our information literacy specialists. They'll be focusing on digital citizenship, STEAM activities, makerspace activities. We heard the discussion earlier about our new campuses getting renovations. A lot of that is focused on creation and creativity and being able to utilize these makerspace areas for enhancing and engaging and really improving the educational technology focus of what we're doing in classrooms today. Greg talked about Google Certified Educator training a little while ago. We want to be a Google reference district. Google for Education reference districts are districts that demonstrate excellence in leadership through the innovative use of technology. Now, most of that's geared around G Suite, Google Apps for Education, or Chromebooks, but they're still using it to drive impact and positive learning outcomes. So the pictures on the left show the cabinet, executive team, Mr. Cardona and assistant superintendents, engaging in a day-and-a-half-long mini boot camp to become Google Certified Educator Level 1 educators. They've helped us set the tone and begin that movement to have teachers and administrators become Google Certified Level 1 educators, right? On the right-hand side, this is a snapshot of one of the mini boot camps that we had in the summer. So we had 42 participants, and 25 of those participants were actually received their Google Certified Level 1. That's roughly, what, 60%? Good things. So That's the PD aspect. There are also some digital tools that we can utilize to help us improve some efficiencies and really improve the classroom aspect for teachers and students. One of those is Clever. Greg talked about single sign-on. This is that single sign-on portal. Think of it as a single space for schools to access the majority of their learning software and resources. The thought when implementing this was, what solution do we have or can we acquire to help us increase instructional time by removing some of the red tape and really improving efficiency so that when students are in classrooms, they get logged in. I don't want to walk in to a classroom and see students fumbling trying to log into a computer and teachers wasting 5, 10, 15 minutes to make that happen. So this is a way to help improve that entire aspect. The second image on the screen is Canvas. That's the icon for Canvas on the right-hand side. This is a learning management system. Its job is to help deliver content to students. It's very feature-rich. It's a very robust platform. It is true personalization at its finest. The tool will provide the opportunity for implementing things we call learning pathways. So if a student doesn't hit a specific target, we're able to branch out and provide some extra support for those students to get them back on level. If they are above or accelerated, we're able to branch out and provide some more rigorous extension activities and things for them to engage in. There are dedicated parent, student, and teacher apps for this product, so all aspects stay informed. Canvas offers a large amount of oversight and visibility for parents. Parents are basically observers into all of the digital classrooms. They can see all events, they see all assignments due, all course modules, announcements, syllabi, a lot of other things. In addition to that, they offer digital portfolios. So a couple of months ago, I was meeting with Kevin Hodges, who works for Google in Austin, and we were talking about the demands of today's workforce. And one of the things he was saying is, what are companies like Google, Facebook, Indeed, Dropbox looking for in today's workforce? And he said, you have to be able to provide some sort of showcase of your work that show that you can apply things, right? This helps us meet those demands of the workforce. If we have Google, Facebook, Dropbox, and all of these companies in Austin in our backyard saying that that's what's needed and what's preferred to get a job by one of these big companies, you better believe it, we're going to do our best to make sure that we have something in place so that we can start having students showcase their work and presenting artifacts so that they can provide to the public. Just to note, several universities are moving to this route with the learning management systems. So Texas State has Cat's Web based on something called Sakai. They're down to 2 finalists. One of those is Canvas. St. Edward's University, Texas A&M University both implement Canvas. We hope to be able to utilize digital portfolios as an additional way for admissions to vet prospective students. I think back to whenever I was applying to become a grad student. Now, I'm not the best standardized test taker. So it would have been awesome for me to be able to have a portfolio to showcase all of my computer science programs, some of the artificial intelligence stuff that I dabbled in, to be able to present to showcase that I could apply what I was learning. The foundation has been set. The focus is to increase comfort levels for teachers and expose students to more personalized and engaging classroom activities. You guys have any questions?
You have a big job if you have 78 and 70 teachers not feeling comfortable using their devices or using technology. It's a big challenge for y'all to do the staff development.
It is, and it's really on the aspect of how comfortable are they integrating tools into the classroom, into the lesson plans. And I think that's, like I said, where we take that approach with educational technology coaches and our instructional coaches to help further our reach.
What percent of our students have internet access at home?
Okay, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? So it's very important to us. It was important enough that we added that question to online registration. So at least for all of the secondary students, we're collecting that information right now to actually get the down-to-earth truth on not only how many, but who they are, so we can go after them. There are a couple different efforts that are taking place, actually. We mentioned Bright Bites. Well, part of the Bright Bites survey that's done to assess technology adoption in the district includes that question as well. Although we did have one administration of that survey in the spring, probably didn't quite get the engagement that we needed to have statistical significance, but it did indicate that around 10 to 12% didn't have that access. I think that we'll learn more about that this time around, and it's probably not going to be that number. But that is a study that was done, and I don't know, it may not be accurate.
I bet it's 50-50.
Right.
I mean,
right.
just anecdotally, that seems crazy low. So you're saying 10%?
Well,
did
again,
not
keep in mind, like I said, I don't think that we had enough. I only mentioned it because it was something that we did and to actually attempt to get that number, but it was late in the year when we administered that. We'll do it again this fall, and we'll be able to compare that to what we're actually seeing with the numbers of online registration. Secondly, the grant opportunity. There's been an opportunity to possibly receive some access for students that don't have it. But as a part of that, there's a study to actually study how many don't have it. So we may get some additional assistance to figure out what that is.
And how does a student who does not have internet access at home, how do they take their Chromebook, do the assignment, and get it to their teacher?
Okay. Well, we can talk about downloading content, but obviously one of the things that is important to Mr. Cardona, he's made it very clear, and we know that as well, so we're taking steps to find out who these students are. And it'll be a combination of surveying, but also feedback from the campuses, parent liaisons, et cetera, to identify them and to rectify that problem. So that's definitely going to be an effort. But there is also the capability of downloading content onto the device and taking it with you. I don't know if you want to address that anymore, but that could be part of the strategy as well.
Yeah, pretty much anything from the Google ecosystem allows us to download content and cache it on the device. If we're talking 6th, 7th, and 8th, those are Chromebooks. But at the high school level, they have a full-blown Windows PC, so they have Google Drive and the unlimited amount of storage space that they have to cache content there as well, and then pulling it down locally. Part of this Canvas LMS implementation is that it integrates so much with Google that as students work through the modules, the Google content can be cached on the machine, so they don't really need to rely on internet access. In addition to that, utilizing Clever single sign-on, we have online digital textbooks that can be downloaded in PDF version so they can stay up to date with their textbook necessities.
The Google Drive is not cloud-based?
Google Drive is cloud-based. However, there are tools to allow users to cache content on a device. So they can keep a copy of whatever they so choose on the Chromebook or on a Windows machine.
Well, I know that's a key piece for the teachers to be able to utilize it for assignments and the return of assignments. They have to be able to have the whole class do it, not 15 of 22 or something, because they can't have one system for those 15 and then another system for the other 7. And to me, where I sat, that was one of the failings in our first effort as a district at 1-to-1 4 or 5 years ago, is just the utilization of what they could actually do with it was so low. They were just, so soon they weren't utilized at all, at least from what I saw. So hopefully you'll have answers for that.
We don't want to discredit the fact that that's a great question, and it's one that we're going to be studying very closely. Again, it's important to Mr. Cardona, it's important to us, and we're going to have to learn that because it's a figure that we don't actually know. He actually said the word is anecdotal evidence at this point, reports, but that's super important for us to try to peel that onion back to find out what the truth is and then take steps. I wanted to follow up on one thing too. Someone said that Mr. Navarez has a big challenge for him and his Edtech coaches to help these teachers along, the 70-something% that are not comfortable. And this is very different than what we did 5 years ago. This is not just Mr. Navarez and his team. The discussions that are happening at the administrative level, these guys are planting seeds. They're they're scaling out by touching the regular instructional coaches with the administration on board. So it's not just Mr. Navarez and his team, it's the entire team, because the conversations are happening with everyone and the expectations have been set with teachers, and that's just not something that happened the first time around.
Of the devices that were given out last year, did we lose any of them, or did any of them get damaged?
A surprisingly low amount got damaged and lost. Actually, I would say that most of the devices didn't go home as much as we thought they would, which was one of the reasons. Also, a lot of them were iPads that were in a almost bulletproof case. So the iPads that we had were super protected, but it was a very low amount. Now, I'm not saying that to indicate that I think this is going to be low. A planning target for us, after talking to other districts, is we're expecting around a 10% rate to have to deal with. We're hoping that the insurance, optional insurance will assist with that. It should fund that. We'll see if it's more or less than 10%. Obviously, laptops are a little bit more delicate than a single iPad in a case, but we have great cases for the Chromebooks and laptops as well.
Any other questions?
Ms. Cantu.
Mr. Arredondo?
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. I guess just to reiterate Mr. McLaughlin's question, I too am very curious as the rate of students who have or do not have internet Wi-Fi access at home. I mean, and when it comes down to even the survey, I could not have Wi-Fi at home, but I could hear the survey and think, well, I have internet on my phone, so do I have internet at home? Yes, I do. And so obviously I think, again, getting that information is going to be critical. And I'm under the assumption that even with working with transportation, we know where the concentration of students are. I mean, anecdotally, I would assume that one of the most vulnerable populations to lack of Wi-Fi is the Redwood community. And so obviously having those conversations now of what that looks like to ensure that there's Wi-Fi access to large concentrations of SMCISD students, I'd be interested. I think Karen and others referenced it, that there are some innovative ideas in the pipeline. And so I'm, confident that you'll have some solutions planned. But again, like Mr. McLaughlin said, I think that information is critical as we move forward with this initiative. Thank you, Ms. Cantu.
Do we have Wi-Fi on the buses?
We don't have now. We haven't had student devices. We have applied for a grant to pilot Wi-Fi on one bus. I'm hoping that we get that to prove in the usage. I think that'll be important to justify expenditure of funds to put it on multiple buses to show the positive use of it on a bus. So even if we didn't get that grant, we definitely will pilot it, or we hope to pilot it. We didn't budget it, but it'd be an approval, to you guys, budget amendment to put it on a couple to do that pilot. So, but currently we don't.
Thanks.
In addition to the Wi-Fi discussion, with the help of Mr. Fernandez, we're working on Rattler Wi-Fi zones in the community where businesses allow students to come and utilize their Wi-Fi for free, and we had 3 to sign up today. Is that correct?
Yeah, thanks. Who are, I'm sorry, are you done? Who are those 3 so we can make sure that we thank them? Oh, okay.
I can send it.
Okay, thank you.
Great report. Thank you.
Yeah, somewhere. President Cantu, just individually, on the reports, I mean, it's been 2 hours and 32 minutes and we haven't voted on anything yet. I don't know if some of this could be given to us in written format. I could read it in advance, and then the presentations could be more of a highlight and a Q&A, but all of the, reading through the entirety of it, is just probably a little bit of overkill on time. We
had talked about it setting limits, like 30 minutes. Hadn't we started off with like 30 minutes of reports?
Maybe enforcing that somehow would be helpful, and just if we get to the hour point, we can table it to the next meeting or something so that we get out of here at a reasonable time, especially as school begins. Lots of people have to work tomorrow, besides me, but, including me.
Is there agreement with this?
And I just, again, I think some of us on the board have made it pretty clear that we wanted the board book in a timely manner, and because we are getting the board book several days in advance, I don't think there's any excuse that any documents or presentations in the board book should not be reviewed prior to the meeting. So again, like Mr. McLaughlin said, I think overview and summary, and then time for Q&A would be my preference as an individual trustee.
I don't mind going over the 30 minutes because the community needs to know the information too, not just us.
It's being televised, so other people get benefit.
There's probably
people in
like
the
4
audience.
people streaming or something. I
Well,
mean,
but the people here in the audience and, anybody that wants to look at it either tonight or maybe another night, I'm not saying make it extra long, I'm just, again, hitting highlights, but like the academic things, I think we need to, that's where we're supposed to spend the majority of our time as a board.
Ms. Cantu. Mr. Superintendent, are the board books and the associated presentations still posted online, connected to, adjacent to, next to the live stream link as well? So the presentations are available to the public or those watching at home?
Well, let's move into
I
approval
think
of.
administration would be glad to cut out several of these presentations. As
Y'all
long as
just
the
don't.
board doesn't come back later and say, can you give us an update on
Absolutely.
them? So I
There
mean,
you
we'd be
go.
happy to comply.
I mean, just if they just were in highlights, because I can read it. The technology one wasn't in at least my board book, so that was all new. But most of the academic stuff I had looked at, and I don't know. Just I know it's a balance between running through things very fast and being as thorough as we are tonight, but somewhere probably in the middle of those 2 points would be good for me.
Shall we proceed then with approval of consent agenda items?
I'll move to amend the. I'll move to adopt the consent agenda items.
I'll
Do we
second.
have anything in item B?
We don't have anything in item B. No, there's nothing in item B.
We have down on item 9 and 10.
All right, so I'll motion to approve consent items A, C, and D.
I'll second.
Mr. McLaughlin moves and Mr. Redondo seconds. I do want to make a comment that on the August 6, 2018 minutes, the agenda was not exactly followed. We prematurely adjourned prior to the academic update. All in favor? 6, all opposed, 0. Items for action.
Starting on page 46 is the budget amendments. There are 2 amendments. The first one is our purchase order rollovers from the previous year, and the second amendment is for the Gear Up grant to purchase 500 calculators, and this will be for the implementation of algebra district-wide to all the 8th graders.
I'm gonna make a motion that we approve the budget amendments as presented.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
You'll second?
Sure.
That was interesting.
Ms. Villapando seconds. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'm gonna vote. I'm sure they'll carry, but I'm gonna vote against them because we just passed the budget, and it's irritating to me to pass a budget and spend all that time, and then like month 1 coming back, we have an amendment. Plus, I don't understand why the Chromebooks can't do the calculating, and why they're $132 a piece. So, anyway, that's my discussion.
That's your discussion. Ready for the vote. All in favor? 5. All opposed? 1. Consider ordinance for setting 2018 tax rate.
Yes, on page 150 is the ordinance setting the tax rate. On June 25th, 2018, we had a public meeting to discuss the tax rate and the budget. The budget was approved. The calculated rate still stands for $1.06 for M&O and 0.3541 cents for INS, for a total tax rate of $1.4141. And this rate is effectively 4.99% higher than the previous rate, effectively.
I have a question.
We're on B. B, setting the tax rate.
But we didn't do C.
I thought we had approved A, C, and D already in that first motion.
No, we're on items for action. We did A and B. Have we done C? That's what I'm asking.
He mentioned, didn't you
Didn't you,
mention C?
who made the motion on the A, C, and D?
The consent items, I did.
Yeah, he
That was
did.
consent, but
That
we're
was
under,
consent.
Now
We're on B. Yeah.
Yeah,
B.
we are
Just
on
did
B.
A.
sorry.
The tax
sorry,
rate.
sorry.
we're on items for action.
I was reading the
I
wrong
have
thing.
a question.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Karen.
It's okay.
If the amounts are the same for the M&O and the bonded indebtedness, how come it's an increase?
Because remember your values, when you
Because
get
the
your
values
tax,
went up,
yes.
so
So
that's-
that, even though that amount, that yields more money to the district than it did,
And
last year.
that's fine, but.
Yes,
But
effectively, yes.
that's what the effective.
Yes,
tax
that's what
rate
effective
is.
tax rate means,
Is the
yes.
increase in the amounts,
Yes.
not the tax rate. Thank you.
Do we have
I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of 1.414100, which is effectively a 4.99% increase in the tax rate.
A second.
Ms. Hanson seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. You're not voting? All opposed? 2 opposed. So it passed 4-2.
On page 152 of your board book are the certified appraisal values for all 3 counties. You have Hayes, Guadalupe, and Caldwell County for your approval.
I'll move to accept the certified appraisal rolls for the San Marcos Independent School District.
I'll second.
Mr. McLaughlin makes the motion, Mr. Arredondo seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? 6, all opposed, 0.
On page 156 of your book is the effective tax rate and rollback rate for 2018.
Ms. Hanson?
This is what confused me. I move that we approve the effective tax rate and the rollback tax rate for the 2017 school year for SMCISD.
I'll second.
Mr. Arredondo seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? 6, 5, all opposed? 1. Consider approval of schematic design for Crockett, Travis, Mendez, Hernandez, and Bowie Elementary School renovations.
I'll move to approve the schematic design renovations for the projects as presented.
I'll second.
Mr. McLaughlin moves and Mr. Arredondo seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? 6, all opposed, 0. Consider approval of interlocal agreement between San Marcos CISD and the City of San Marcos, acting by and through the San Marcos Police Department for school resource officers.
I move that we approve this interlocal agreement.
Ms. Hanson makes the motion.
I'll second.
Mr. Arredondo seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? 6, all opposed, 0. We'll now go into closed session to discuss the Bonham Pre-Kindergarten and Bowie Elementary Assistant Principal candidates.
Time, please.
It is 8:40. 8, God, I can't see it, 8:46.
8:48.
Yeah, but it says
No, that's
8:48,
wrong.
but it's
It's
2 minutes.
8:46.
It's always 2 minutes less than that. We reconvened at 8:46 from executive session.
Okay.
8:46.
We did.
To reconvene at 8:46. Ready? I'll entertain a motion for the elementary system. Ms. Hanson?
Yeah, do.
We'll do them
Bonham?
separately.
Okay. I move that we approve Elohia Martinez as the assistant principal at Bonham Pre-K.
I second.
All in, Ms. Costilla seconds. All in favor? All opposed? One abstention?
Abstain, yeah.
Okay. That was on Eulogia Martinez. Ready for another, motion? Ms. Hanson?
Move that we approve Lindsay Lamberas as assistant principal at Bowie Elementary.
I'll second.
Mr. Arredondo seconds. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All opposed? 0. I'll entertain a motion for.
A motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion by Mr. McLaughlin to adjourn, and Mr. Arredondo seconds. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I voted in favor. I would have not voted against.
Yeah.
Love you all to death.
Please do not vote